$500.000 is enough to escape the paycheck trap. Here's the math. What if the number you've been chasing your entire adult life is wrong? Not slightly wrong, not off by a few $100,000. Completely wrong. For years, you've been told the same story. Work harder, earn more, invest aggressively, and maybe, if everything goes perfectly, you'll need $2 million to finally feel safe. Some experts say 3, some say 5. The number keeps moving, and somehow it always feels just out of reach. But what if financial freedom doesn't require millions? What if $500, strategically invested, could make work optional? Not luxury for Instagram freedom. Not private jet freedom. Real freedom. The kind where your bills are covered, your time is yours, and your decisions aren't driven by quiet panic. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people aren't chasing freedom. They're chasing a lifestyle image. Bigger house, newer car, nicer vacations. They're upgrading their expenses in the name of progress, while pushing actual independence further away. Wealth was never about accumulation. It was about margin. Margin between what you earn and what you need. Margin between survival and choice. Margin between working because you must and working because you want to. That's the difference between looking rich and being free. Welcome to Quietly Broke. If this way of thinking about money already feels different, if it challenges something you've assumed for years, subscribe to the channel. Because we're not here to flex wealth. We're here to quietly build it. Now let me ask you something. If you had enough passive income to cover your basic life tomorrow, would you? A. Keep upgrading your lifestyle to match your income. Or B. Protect your margin and buy back your time? Comment A or B below. I'm curious which path you're really on. If freedom is really about margin, then we need to talk about the numbers that create it. Strip away the hype, ignore the headlines, forget the endless predictions about what the market will do next year. At its core, financial independence is a math problem. Let's start conservatively. A $500 portfolio invested in relatively stable, income-producing assets, high-quality bonds, dividend-focused funds, diversified ETFs, can reasonably target a 5% long-term return. 5% of $500 is $25 per year. That's a little over $2 per month generated without selling off your foundation. That's not extravagant, but it's real. Now widen the lens. Historically, a diversified stock and bond portfolio has averaged closer to 8% annually over long periods. 8% of $500 is $40 per year. Around $3.300 per month. Here's where this becomes powerful. You're not withdrawing randomly. You're operating within a sustainable range. If your portfolio averages 8% and you withdraw 6% or less, you leave room for growth. That remaining spread, 2% or more, helps offset inflation and gradually lifts your principal over time. You're not burning through money. You're harvesting it. This distinction changes everything. Most people think retirement means slowly draining a savings account until it runs dry. That's a fragile plan. It turns every market dip into a threat and every economic downturn into panic. But when you structure withdrawals below long-term returns, volatility becomes survivable. In strong years, your portfolio grows and builds cushion. In weaker years, you're still operating within a framework designed to endure cycles. And remember, passive income doesn't have to be a single stream. Dividends, bond yields, rental cash flow, even part-time income layered on top. These diversify your resilience. Financial independence isn't a single pillar. It's a system. There's another layer most people overlook. Government benefits like Social Security. While it shouldn't be the foundation of your strategy, it can serve as a stabilizer later in life. Even a modest monthly benefit meaningfully reduces pressure on your portfolio, extending its durability. But here's the deeper shift. The moment your assets generate enough to cover your baseline expenses, your relationship with money changes. Income becomes additive instead of essential. Work becomes strategic instead of urgent. You stop measuring success purely by salary and start measuring it by autonomy. The number itself isn't magic. The structure is. And once you understand that structure, returns, withdrawals, diversification, margin, you realize financial independence isn't mystical. It's mechanical. The real question isn't whether the math works. It's whether your lifestyle allows the math to work for you. And this is exactly where most people quietly sabotage the math. Because the equation itself isn't the hard part. The hard part is keeping your life small enough for the equation to work. Lifestyle inflation doesn't feel dangerous. It feels earned. You get promoted, so you move into the nicer place. You've been working hard, so you upgrade the car. You tell yourself you deserve the convenience, the better neighborhood, the premium everything. None of it feels reckless. It feels normal. That's what makes it so powerful. A 35-year-old earning $140 a year doesn't think they're overspending. They're just living, appropriately, for their income. 2 car payments, a mortgage that stretches but is manageable, private school, weekly dinners out because time is scarce and energy is low, subscriptions that cost less than a dinner but add up to thousands annually. On paper, they're successful. In reality, their monthly burn rate is $8. Now run the math backwards. To safely support an $8 lifestyle with investment income alone, you'd need well over $1.5 million. Suddenly, the $500 path feels impossible, not because the strategy is flawed, but because the lifestyle has outrun it. The quiet truth is this: most people don't actually need more income. They need fewer fixed obligations. Every fixed expense is a form of dependency. Car payments lock you in. Oversized mortgages reduce flexibility. Recurring subscriptions create background noise that quietly drains your capacity to build assets. The most dangerous expenses aren't the big splurges. They're the permanent upgrades. When you increase your baseline cost of living, you raise the bar your investments must clear. You increase the number that defines enough. And that number has a way of expanding faster than your portfolio ever can. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. If someone earning $80 can live on $3 a month and invest consistently, while someone earning $150 spends $9 a month and saves little, who is closer to financial independence? The answer isn't about intelligence or effort. It's about structure. We've been conditioned to display progress through consumption. Nicer zip code, newer vehicle, bigger home. But visible upgrades often create invisible pressure. You feel successful in public and trapped in private. And the trap tightens slowly. You become cautious about changing jobs because the mortgage depends on it. You hesitate to take risks because the car payment demands certainty. You delay dreams because your lifestyle requires stability. This is the real cost of lifestyle inflation. It trades optionality for appearance. Financial freedom isn't crushed by catastrophic decisions. It's eroded by reasonable ones. Repeated consistently. The person who protects their baseline expenses protects their future flexibility. The one who keeps their lifestyle lean creates space for compounding to work quietly in the background. The math doesn't fail people. Their fixed costs do. And until you confront that honestly, no portfolio, no matter how well constructed, can fully liberate you. When you lower your fixed costs enough for the math to breathe, something far more powerful than numbers begins to emerge. It's not just income from investments. It's leverage. The moment your basic expenses are covered by assets instead of effort, your psychology shifts. You stop waking up with low-grade financial anxiety humming in the background. You stop calculating every decision around what might threaten your paycheck. You stop tolerating environments that drain you simply because you have to. That shift is subtle at first. Then it becomes profound. You negotiate differently when you don't desperately need the job. You speak more honestly when your mortgage isn't hanging over every sentence. You evaluate opportunities based on alignment instead of urgency. This is the freedom multiplier. A $500 foundation doesn't just produce income. It produces courage. Maybe you thought about starting something on your own. A small business, consulting, writing, teaching. But the risk felt irresponsible because failure meant financial strain. When your baseline is covered, experimentation becomes possible. Not reckless, calculated. Or maybe the change isn't dramatic at all. Maybe it's simply reducing your hours. Working 4 days instead of 5. Turning down overtime that steals your evenings. Spending more time with your kids while they still want you around. That kind of freedom rarely makes headlines. But it changes the quality of your life in ways that luxury upgrades never could. Optional work feels entirely different from survival work. When you choose to show up, creativity replaces resentment. Curiosity replaces burnout. You're no longer extracting energy just to maintain your lifestyle. You're directing energy towards something meaningful. And here's the deeper layer most people miss. When dependency shrinks, fear shrinks. Fear of layoffs, fear of recessions, fear of disappointing a boss, fear of speaking up. Financial margin reduces emotional fragility. You don't have to quit your job tomorrow. You don't have to retire early. The goal isn't escape, it's autonomy. Autonomy over your time. Autonomy over your energy. Autonomy over your decisions. Money, at its highest function, buys optionality. And optionality is the difference between reacting to life and designing it. That is what a strong financial foundation really creates, not luxury. Not applause, but quiet power. And quiet power is the kind that lasts. And if that kind of quiet power is possible, then the real transformation isn't in your bank account, it's in your identity. Building toward financial independence reshapes you long before you ever reach the number. It forces you to confront your impulses. It trains you to delay gratification in a culture that worships instant everything. It teaches you to separate what feels good now from what builds freedom later. Over time, you start thinking differently. You stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "What does this cost my future?" You begin to see money not as something to consume, but as something to deploy. Every dollar becomes a decision about who you are becoming. You develop restraint, not out of scarcity, but out of intention. You become immune to the pressure to keep up. You realize that most status symbols are rented, financed, or fragile. Real security doesn't announce itself. It compounds quietly in the background. And here's the beautiful part. Once you internalize that mindset, setbacks don't break you. Markets fluctuate, jobs change, economies shift, but the habits remain, the discipline remains, the clarity remains. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. Start smaller than your ego wants to admit. Automate a contribution. Eliminate one expense that doesn't truly serve you. Redirect that money toward assets instead of appearances. The path isn't glamorous. It's repetitive. It's consistent. It's often invisible. But so is compounding. 10 or 15 years from now, you won't remember the dinners you didn't upgrade or the car you chose not to finance. You will remember the freedom you built. The decision isn't about $500. It's about whether you want to become someone who owns their time. Choose accordingly. When you zoom out, this entire conversation isn't really about hitting a specific number. It's about reclaiming control. The $500 framework is simply a lens that forces you to rethink the rules you've been handed. For most of your adult life, you were likely told that freedom comes after decades of sacrifice. That security requires a massive pile of money. And that success must be visible to be real. But the deeper truth is quieter than that. Financial independence is less about the size of your portfolio and more about the structure of your life. It's about aligning your expenses with your values, aligning your investments with your long-term vision, and aligning your identity with discipline rather than impulse. The number is just a milestone. The real victory is becoming someone who cannot be easily controlled by fear, status pressure, or lifestyle creep. The lesson here is simple but profound. Freedom grows in the gap between what you earn and what you need. If you want to apply this today, start by measuring your true baseline expenses. Not your upgraded lifestyle, your actual essentials. Then begin building assets specifically designed to cover that baseline. Automate investing. Question permanent upgrades. Protect your margin. Small, consistent decisions made now will compound into options later. Let me ask you something simple. If your basic expenses were covered tomorrow, what would you change first in your life? Comment your answer below so we can all learn from each other's perspectives. And if this conversation shifted how you think about money, subscribe to the channel to support the mission and keep building wealth quietly, intelligently, and intentionally.